My parents said to me, "I wish you'd never been born." They didn't say it in a fight or under their breath, thinking I wouldn't hear. I wondered why. For what reason? I didn't understand why my parents didn't love their child. I was 16. That day, I learned that silence can hurt worse than a slap. 54 years later, I stood in my lawyer's office after my mother's funeral, the air filled with the scent of lilies and photocopier toner. My brother sat with his elbows on his knees. My sister crossed her legs and looked at her manicure. The lawyer cleared his throat and read the will. The house, the savings, the antique ring our grandmother had smuggled out of her native country in her shoe. It was all theirs. A letter in a separate envelope, dated 2 months ago, was for me. "I'm sorry," the lawyer said, passing it across the table. My sister didn't look upset. "That's what Mom wanted. Don't make it harder." I opened the envelope and saw my mother's neat handwriting, the same one I'd memorized on shopping lists to feel useful. The first line matched an old sentence. "You were never meant to be in this family." The paper was shaking, but my hands weren't. Imagine being told you were an accident, then watching your existence erased one by one. Was I still a mistake after washing her hair in the hospital sink, after sleeping in a chair next to machines that buzzed like bees? "We'll clean the house this weekend," my brother said, avoiding my gaze. "You can have all the clothes you left in your old room." My old room. I almost laughed. The room where I hid report cards I knew no one would admire. In the room where I planned my escape. How many times can you erase your daughter before she writes her own ending? They didn't notice my little black notebook on the arm of my chair or the flash drive tucked into my purse. They didn't know about the voicemails I'd saved or the checkbook I'd balance when the numbers stopped adding up, or the neighbor who'd watched the comings and goings when Mom's pills started fading faster than her memory. They assumed I'd come to beg. They'd forgotten that I'd learned early on how to survive. "Sure," I said, folding the letter. "Let's do this properly." My brother sighed in relief. My sister lifted her chin in triumph. None of them had seen the door I'd already opened for myself. They'd said it once, and it had gotten under my skin. For years I'd pretended it didn't itch. You learn to build a house around barbed wire. You learn to sit very still. On the day the will was read, I came home with the lilies on my coat sleeve and the letter in my purse, like a red-hot coin that would not go away. I brewed tea, which I did not drink, and opened my small black notebook. Dates, names, times. I had kept it since the first missed mortgage payment 2 winters ago, when my mother swore her checkbook was wandering. I helped her search the kitchen, the couch under the living room rug where dust collected like gray lace. The checkbook turned up in the dashboard of my sister's car, tucked under a stack of dry cleaning receipts. It was the first entry in the notebook. I didn't blame anyone. I wrote and then watched Dot. That night, I saved the voicemails again to the flash drive. My mother humming off key, my sister leaving brisk instructions, the bank's automated robot reminding her of an overdraft when she hadn't overdrawn anything in her life. I returned to a message my mother had left a month before she died. "We'll sort it next week, dear," she said, trying to sound light. "Your sister says the pills were counted wrong. Don't bother yourself." In the background, there was a drawer slamming, and my mother lowered her voice like a girl caught whispering in church. "Blue box," she added. "Top shelf." Then the line went quiet with the small, empty click of a woman accustomed to hanging up first. I went to her house the next morning. I still had a key. No one had yet thought to change those locks. The place smelled like lemon cleaner and old quilts. The kitchen clock ticked in a steady old man heartbeat. My brother had already been through the desk drawers. The papers were too tidy, the pens aligned like soldiers. My sister had taken the framed photos from the dining room. That was her habit. Rearrange the evidence, own the past Dot. The pantry had a footstool with a cracked step. I climbed up, pressed my palm against the plaster, then pushed aside a dented tin of cocoa. Behind it, a dusty shoebox the color of rain. Inside, receipts bound with brittle rubber bands, 2 savings passbooks with the gold lettering worn down, a sealed envelope with my name written in my mother's winter hand. Beneath those, a small zippered bag. I unzipped it and poured out the contents onto the counter. The antique ring, heavy and cold, a flat key wrapped in wax paper, and a crumpled index card that simply said, "If they hurry you, wait." The sealed envelope was dated last summer. I sat at the table with the sun slanting across the vinyl, and I opened my mother's words. She had written in short lines, like someone crossing a dangerous bridge and testing each plank. "I'm sorry for the letter I must send you later," she wrote. "They will read it to you with the others, and you will think I put it there. It will save me a fight when I have no breath. Forgive me. I did not keep watch the way a mother should. I thought I was sparing you. I did not spare you." There was a second page, an assignment of a small savings certificate to me in consideration of care and affection, witnessed by the neighbor across the street, dated and signed. And another, a revocation of the power of attorney my sister had talked her into 6 months earlier, handwritten and witnessed with a note. "New will in bank box. Ask for Mr. Giroux." The name was familiar from the branch, a manager with patient eyes. The doorbell rang. I slid the papers back into the shoebox and covered it with a bag of rice. Through the lace curtain I saw my sister on the porch, her mouth drawn tight the way she held it when she'd made a decision. She let herself in without waiting. "You can't be here alone," she said, all business. "We're cataloging this afternoon. The estate needs order." The word estate made it sound like we were talking about horses and orchards, not the little blue house with the peeling porch and the stubborn furnace we all grew up kicking. "I'll stay out of your way," I said. "I'm just picking up a sweater." She scanned the room like a customs officer. "No boxes." I smiled. "No boxes." She stepped closer, lowered her voice as if we were co-conspirators. "About the will. Don't make it difficult, all right? Mom didn't want arguments." I thought of the letter in my handbag, the stage cruelty of it. "No," I said. "She didn't." When she left, I waited until her car turned the corner. Then I took the flat key from the wax paper and drove to the bank. Mr. Giroux was a gray-haired man with careful hands. "I knew your mother for 30 years, he said, once the door to his small office clicked shut. "She baked me cranberry bread every December." "That sounds like her," I said. He laced his fingers on the desk. "Your sister came in with your mother 2 months ago. I asked the usual questions. Your mother kept looking at her instead of me. That wasn't like her." He glanced at the hallway, then at me. "There's a safe deposit box. Your mother rarely used it. Last summer she came alone to add documents. She wrote a note authorizing access to you, provided you bring identification and, what did she call it?" He smiled without joy. "Her ashamed of asking key." He produced a registry card, my mother's looping signature a little shaky but still determined. "It's unusual," but she insisted. He opened a drawer and took out a narrow metal key with a dark ribbon. "If this is the key you brought, we can proceed?" It fit. The clerk rolled out the box with a rattle and gave us privacy. Inside, a manila envelope labeled, "To be opened by my daughter, alone." It held an original will dated 18 months prior, leaving the house to be split 3 ways, but naming me executor. It left the antique ring to me in memory of Patience, and a modest annuity to our brother's son who never asked for anything. There was also a notarized letter rescinding the later power of attorney and a list of medication doses. Written in my mother's firm hand with ticks next to days when pills had gone missing. A separate index card. My sister's name followed by a careful, sorrowful note. Do not punish. Stop. Beneath that, a second will dated 3 weeks prior to the one the lawyer read, with a signature I recognized, but that lay differently on the line, as if dragged. There was no notary seal. I stared at it. My mother had known she was dying and had been caught in a storm she did not make. Is this enough? I asked. For what? Mr. Giroux asked gently. For asking the court to wait. He nodded. I'll have our counsel contact the probate clerk today. There can be a temporary hold if there's doubt. I don't just have doubt, I said, and I laid out the papers like a hand of cards. I have a key. I walked out of the bank into early winter air, the sky a white lid. I stopped at the pharmacy. The pharmacist was a young woman with a calm voice who took time with the old men counting quarters. Your mother, she said, when I gave her the name. I'm sorry for your loss. Did she pick up her pills herself last month? I asked. She looked at the screen. No, your sister signed for them. Twice. I thanked her and left. Outside my hands shook, not from grief, from the clean heat of anger, finally allowed to burn. At home, I spread my papers on the table and called an elder law attorney recommended by a woman from church. He was in his 60s, thoughtful, with the kind of watch that doesn't try to look expensive. I can file a caveat to hold the will, he said. We'll ask for an injunction preventing any sale or distribution until we sort the documents. They want to clear the house this weekend, I said. Then we'll serve them before Saturday, he replied. Do you have reason to believe there's been undue influence? Reason, I repeated and let the word sit. Yes. Then we'll need proof, he said. Witnesses, financial records, you can say what you've seen. You can't guess. Keep it steady. I've been steady a long time. He exhaled softly, a sound like respect. All right, let's build. I called the neighbor across from my mother's house, a widow with a good porch. She came in her cardigan, bringing me a small plastic box of index cards. Your mother asked me to witness something last summer, she said. She made me promise to keep these safe and to give them to you if anything looked off. Inside were dates, times, notes, who came and went, when my sister's car stayed past midnight, when a man we didn't know visited twice in a week and left with a folder under his arm. There were 2 slips, each marked medication count redone, with numbers crossed out and rewritten. I didn't want to think badly, the neighbor whispered, eyes glossy. But she was scared of being a trouble. You did right, I said. It felt like I was placing bricks into a foundation and testing each one for wobble. My brother called that night. We need you to be reasonable, he said. His voice had the patience men use when they're sure they're in charge. I am being reasonable, I said. I filed a caveat. We'll go through the proper steps. He was silent, and then there was the sound of his hand over the phone as if he needed to steady himself. Why would you do that? Because Mom asked me to go slowly, I said, and because I will not be erased again. That letter, he began, but his voice faltered. Mom made choices. Don't blame me for respecting them. Did you respect her when you took her to the bank to open that joint account? I asked. He hesitated. We were helping. Jill said, I repeated. Of course she did. He took a breath. Don't go to war, sis. It's not worth it. It is, I said, with the same quiet ice I had found at my birthday years ago when my children tried to park me somewhere with bingo. It is exactly worth it. Friday, a process server delivered the notice to my sister while she was on the porch with a box marked linens. The papers fluttered like trapped birds. She called me 2 minutes later. You didn't have to do this, she said, voice tight. You've always wanted to make me look bad. I don't have to do anything, I said. I'm choosing to do this. There's a difference. You think you're better than me because you worked in a library and memorized rules? I think I watched Mom, I said, and I learned what help looks like. She made a low sound, a growl or a laugh. You always were dramatic. We're returning Mom's pill bottles to the pharmacy for disposal. You can come if you want. There was rustling, as if she were moving boxes by the phone, shifting the weight of things that should not have been hers. I'll meet you at the house at noon, I said. I arrived early. I wanted to walk the rooms alone before anything could be moved. In the bedroom, I opened the dresser drawer where my mother kept handkerchiefs and found, beneath the lace, a small spiral notebook. Inside were numbers, a column of dates, and beside them initials, J and B. There was a minus sign and an amount that matched the cash withdrawals I had seen on the statements. My mother's handwriting was neat, even in fear. In the margin, she had written, "Ask pharmacist about early refill." And lower, "Don't accuse in anger, keep my voice." I pressed my fingers to the words and felt her still telling me how to survive this family without becoming it. When my sister arrived, she came with her husband in 2 large plastic bags. She dumped pill bottles onto the table with a clatter. "Count if you need to," she said, smirking at the idea, as if I were the sort who would measure each capsule like a coin. "I'm not counting," I said. "We're returning them." I picked up 2 bottles and turned them so the labels faced me. The refill dates were separated by 12 days. My mother's dosage was 1 pill each evening. I said nothing, but I placed my phone face down on the table and tapped the button to record. My sister's husband, a man who believed his voice was a solution, started talking about charities for old furniture. As he spoke, my sister interrupted to tell him to shut up. She put both hands on the table and leaned in. "You can drag this out and spend whatever's left on lawyers," she said. "Is that what you want? To be right, but alone?" "In my experience," I said, "I've been both before and survived." She straightened. "What is the prize for you, then?" "My name," I said simply. "All my life you've said it as if it were a spare thing. I'm taking it back." She scooped the bottles into the bags and left. I waited until the house was quiet before I retrieved my phone. In the recording, there was the clatter of plastic, her husband's voice, and a mutter she hadn't intended anyone to hear, not even herself. "We should have burned that second will." I brought the audio to the attorney. He listened twice, through standard headphones like an old man listening to Chopin, head tilted. "It's not a confession to a crime," he said, careful, as if I were balancing something fragile. "But it points, along with the mismatched refill dates, the neighbor's notes, the bank records, the older will. It points." "Is it enough?" I asked. "It's enough to ask for discovery," he said. "It's enough to keep them from selling chairs out from under you." He filed and the court scheduled a hearing. In the meantime, I went to see our father's oldest friend, a retired accountant with hands like spades and eyes that saw columns. He lived alone in an apartment that smelled of orange peels. "They came to me last spring," he said, once I'd explained. "Your sister wanted me to reconcile your mother's ledger. There were checks missing. I asked after them. She told me your mother had made cash gifts." "Did she?" I asked. He met my eyes. "Your mother believed in saving. She did not believe in cash gifts." "Will you testify to that?" I asked. He nodded. "I will hold a Bible and say it standing up." At the pharmacy, I requested a printout of medication pickup dates. The tech printed reluctantly as policy required. I read the dates again in the car, the numbers aligning like a row of wrong notes. I thought of the hum of the blood pressure cuff in the hospital and my mother saying nothing because she wanted the room to stay quiet. I found the man who had visited twice with a folder under his arm when my neighbor had been watching. He was a notary who ran his business out of a UPS store near the highway. He remembered my sister. She wanted things urgent, he said. She used that word like it would make the ink dry faster. He checked his log. She brought your mother in once. Your mother's hand shook. I asked if she wanted to wait, come back tomorrow. The daughter said they were on a schedule. I refused to notarize. I told them to come back when your mother had her glasses and a glass of water in her. Did they? He shrugged. Not to me. On the day of the hearing, I wore my plain blue dress and pinned my hair back with the old comb my mother gave me when I turned 50. In the hallway outside the courtroom, my sister paced in a suit that looked expensive but tight. My brother stood with his arms folded, looking like a man who would apologize after he got what he wanted. Their lawyer was sharp, a woman with a leather folder and concise questions. Ours was quieter. We did not try to look like anything but what we were. The judge was a woman in her 70s who listened without tapping her pen. She asked for clarity, like a teacher who wants you to show your work. Their lawyer spoke first, smooth and weary with our drama. The decedent made her wishes clear, she said. She had a right to distribute her estate as she saw fit. Agreed, my attorney said when it was our turn. She also had the right to be free from undue influence and to have valid documents controlling her estate, not drafts pushed under her hand. We presented the older will, the revocation letter, the medication logs, the pharmacy pickup printout, the neighbor's testimony, the bank manager's statement about the joint account pressured at his desk. The notary described the visit and his refusal. Finally, we played the audio of my sister muttering about a second will. In the recording, her voice rose like a wasp from a glass. Their lawyer objected to the audio. The judge allowed it to be heard, but saved her face of interpretation. When I took the stand, their lawyer tried to bend me into something brittle. You've always felt you didn't belong to your family, she said, a question threaded through the statement. I was told so, I answered. So your current actions are a way of relitigating your childhood. My current actions are a way of honoring my mother, I said, and let my hands be still. She smiled without joy. She wrote you a letter that said she did not wish to leave you an inheritance. She wrote me many letters, I replied. I brought one. I handed up the envelope from the shoebox. The judge read it quietly. There was a sound in the room like a shared inhale. The judge looked at me over her glasses. For a moment, she did not see a case. She saw a daughter and perhaps a mother. We rested. The judge spoke later that week in a written ruling that arrived in my mailbox like a thin stone. She did not declare winners. She did something more precise. She suspended probate pending a full review, appointed a neutral conservator to oversee the estate temporarily, and barred any sale or removal of property beyond necessary maintenance. She set a date for a longer hearing. She made a particular note that the discrepancy in medication records was concerning and directed us to contact Adult Protective Services to investigate potential exploitation. My sister called that night. "Are you happy now?" she asked, her voice salt. "No," I said. "I am careful." She laughed once, short. "You want to humiliate me." "I want to stop," I said, and I remembered my mother's card. "Do not punish. Stop. This ends when the truth ends it." "Truth," she said, like the word tasted strange. The APS investigator was a woman younger than my daughter, with clear eyes and a notebook. She asked me to tell her everything, without embroidery. I gave her the bank dates, the pharmacy slips, the neighbor's cards, the notary's name, the way my mother had begun to apologize for asking for rides. She nodded and wrote. She interviewed my brother and sister separately, and then she asked to see the house. We walked through the rooms with their drapes drawn. The investigator opened the kitchen cabinet where plastic containers nested without lids. She paused at the spice rack. "What's this?" she asked, tapping at the underside of the shelf. The tape had come loose from the little blue key I had re-hidden there after the bank, and it dangled like a chime. "My mother's idea," I said, and the investigator smiled. It was the smile of a woman who has watched older women hide more than keys. "People protect what others want to take," she said, nodding to herself and writing. 2 weeks later, APS filed a report. It didn't accuse, it documented. It noted irregular refills, bank withdrawals inconsistent with established patterns, and periods where my sister had exclusive access. It recommended a forensic review of finances and a temporary prohibition on any beneficiary transactions. The judge endorsed it. We were moving carefully, step by step. My brother came by the house one afternoon while I was there with the conservator, a tidy woman who labeled everything with painter's tape. He asked to speak to me on the porch. He had 2 cups of coffee and hands that could not settle. "I never wanted it like this," he said. "You know that." "What did you want?" I asked. "To please her," he said, meaning our mother. Then after a beat, "To please Jill. She said we needed to act. She said you would complicate things because you make lists." "And you?" I asked. He stared at the street. "I changed a light bulb and felt like a hero. I took her to the doctor once. I bought her pears. I told myself it was enough." He looked at me finally. It wasn't. "If you're telling me this to feel lighter," I said, "I'm not your priest." "No," he said. "I'm telling you because you are the only one who has ever told me the truth in a way I could stand. I can give you something." He handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a receipt for a cash withdrawal 3 days after our mother's hospitalization for a fall that cracked her hip. The signature line was blank. In the corner, in a handwriting like my sister's when she writes fast, was a note for adjustments. My brother swallowed. "I didn't know about it until I saw the statements. I asked Jill. She said to mind my lane. I minded it." "Will you say this?" I asked. He nodded once, as if agreeing to jump into cold water. "Yes." When the longer hearing came, their lawyer worked hard. She argued that the later letter reflected a long-standing fracture between me and my mother. She suggested the older will was sentimental and the newer one frank. She described me as a woman who feared being left out and who had found a technical way back in. Our attorney didn't bother to polish me. He let the paper speak. He called the bank manager, the notary, the neighbor, the pharmacist, the APS investigator, my brother. The judge listened to each as if they were pieces of a single voice. There was a moment near the end when their lawyer brought out a photograph of my mother and sister at a picnic last summer, smiling with their arms around each other. "Is this the face of a woman coerced?" she asked, looking at the judge, not at me. I stared at the photo too, my mother's cheeks flushed from July. "A woman coerced smiles every day for decades," I said quietly. "She brings potato salad and reminds herself to be small." Their lawyer objected. The judge sustained, but she watched me as she did, and there was something human in it. The judge took 2 weeks and issued a ruling that felt like both balm and bruise. She invalidated the most recent will for failure to meet legal requirements and signs of undue influence. She reinstated the earlier will, naming me executor. She referred the matter of financial withdrawals to the district attorney for review. She did not scold. She did not grandstand. She placed the papers in their right order and set them down. It was enough. When I left the courthouse, the sky was low and gray, and the air held the taste of snow. My sister waited by the steps. Her face was smooth, as if she had ironed every line. "You won," she said. "No," I said. "Mom won. We obeyed her real wishes. She wanted peace, my sister said, jaw tight. She wanted truth, I replied. Peace comes after. She glared at me with the same eyes that used to roll when we were girls. The ring, then, she said. Give it to me. It was never yours, I said. It should have been, she whispered, and I heard it then. The old hunger, the way some people look at love and see a pie to divide. Then ask for something you can still have, I said. Ask for forgiveness. She laughed, then bit the sound off. You're cruel, she said. I am careful, I said again, and I am finished borrowing. We spent the next month cataloging the house properly. I labeled photographs with names and dates so the future would not make strangers of us. I set aside the comb my mother gave me, 3 recipe cards stained with oil, a hand mirror with a nick in the silver. Everything else went where the will directed. I wrote checks as executor and signed them with a hand that did not tremble. I had trembled enough for one life. The district attorney's office called my sister and me in on a Tuesday. The young assistant DA asked simple questions, and my sister answered with complicated sentences that circled and bit their tails. Midway through, she put her head in her hands and asked for water. Outside in the hallway, she caught my sleeve. What do you want from me? She hissed. I wanted you to stop, I said. Now I want you to be better. She stared at me. For a moment, the masks fell away, and we were just 2 old women who had learned how to survive by different lessons. I don't know how, she said. Then start small, I said. Return what you can. Speak plain. Don't move money that isn't yours. Take the pills as prescribed. Visit the graves without rehearsing your speech. I touched her wrist, a gesture I hadn't made in years. You aren't a villain in my mind. You're my sister, but you need to be better at it. She pulled her arm back and nodded like a child who wants to please the teacher. I didn't trust it. I didn't distrust it completely either. There are only so many wars a body can carry. I let the system do its work. Spring crept in slowly with mud and bird song. We sold the house to a family with 2 boys who ran in the yard with their socks off. I stood in the living room the day they closed, my hand on the door frame where our father had drawn our heights with a pencil. My name was a series of notches climbing stubbornly. I used my share to fix my roof, to replace the old furnace that sighed at night, and to fund a little grant at the community college for older women finishing degrees they had put aside. I called it the Blue Box Fund. It felt right to name something after a woman with a secret shelf and a simple plan. My brother started bringing me peaches in summer and called before he came. He helped me change a light bulb without asking for thanks. He met my eyes when he apologized, and when I forgave him, he cried like a man tries not to and fails. He left with less weight. We can all stand to be lighter. My sister sent a card in August. It had sunflowers on it and the slanted handwriting of someone trying to practice humility. Inside she wrote, I'm going to meetings now. I took the money back. It wasn't mine. I don't ask you to answer. She signed it with her full name, as if stepping into it for the first time. I placed the card in the same drawer as my mother's notes and closed it softly. Then I picked up the phone and called her. When she answered, I didn't begin with anything clever. I said her name, and then I said mine, as if it were a gift we could pass to each other without snapping in half. Late that fall, I walked the cemetery path with a thermos of tea and the ring in my pocket. I sat by my mother's stone and poured a cup on the grass, the way my father used to do for his own mother, a habit of sharing with the dead. I followed your instructions, I said. I waited when they hurried me. The wind shook the dry leaves and made a sound like distant applause. I smiled. When I slid the ring onto my finger, it was too big, as if it expected a grander hand. I wore it anyway. not because I needed its value, but because it turned sunlight in a certain patient way and reminded me of a woman who learned late to apologize and early to endure. On the way back to the car, a young woman in a red scarf stopped me. "I know you," she said. She worked at the pharmacy. "You came in with your mother's records." "Yes," I said. She held my gaze. "You did right." After she left, I stood by the gate and watched the street. The world carried on. Buses, pigeons, 3 teenage boys arguing about a game. I thought of the sentence that had tried to define me and the life I had lived around it. Marriage and divorce, a daughter and a son, work that paid the rent, and work that did not. I thought of the day in the lawyer's office when the letter was meant to cut me clean, and how paper can only slice if you hold it wrong. Back at home, I made a pot of soup and called my granddaughter. She is 15 and looks at the world like it should answer her properly. I told her a story about a blue box and a woman who simply refused to be hurried. I didn't make it a lesson. I told it like a map. "Grandma," she said, "what if they say you're wrong?" She meant the world. "Then I will not hurry," I said. "I will hold my name steady and show my work. I will count the pills like coins if I must. I will keep records. I will go to court if I need to. I will not raise my voice until it can be heard without breaking. And if they say you were never meant for this family?" She asked it softly, as if the words were a sparrow she cupped and didn't want to crush. "Then I will make the family I deserve," I said. "I will sit at my own table and invite those who know how to pass the salt without calculations." She was quiet. Then she laughed a little, the pure bell of a girl not yet ashamed of joy. "You're fierce," she said. "No," I said. "I am careful, and I'm not finished." 2 months later, the district attorney's office reached a plea agreement with my sister. She admitted to a lesser charge of financial exploitation. She paid restitution to the estate, completed classes on ethics and elder care, and agreed to counseling for addiction. It did not undo anything, but it stopped the doing. That mattered. When she finished her requirements, she came to my door with a pie she had bought because baking still made her nervous. She stood on my porch with her hands tucked into her sleeves like a girl caught in rain. I let her in. We sat at my small kitchen table with the view of the alley and the neighbor's garage where somebody was forever fixing something. "I thought I needed to win," she said, staring at the pie as if it might reveal how to start. "It felt like losing all those years, watching you leave and get an apartment and read books and have friends who listen to you. I told myself Mom loved me most because I stayed." "Love isn't a ledger," I said, "but we were raised to count." She nodded. "I wanted to be somebody's favorite. I took it like a coat that wasn't mine and wore it out." She looked up. "I'm sorry." "I know," I said. We ate pie, and it was too sweet, and we kept eating. When she left, she hugged me like a person who had been practicing not taking what wasn't hers. It was a start. The Blue Box Fund gave out its first grant in the spring. The recipient was a woman of 59 who worked nights and wanted to finish a degree in accounting. She sent a thank you note with a drawing of a small box on the corner. "I keep one under my sink," she wrote, "not for money, for jokes my grandson tells and grocery lists, and the receipts from a life that's finally adding up the right way." I framed the note and hung it above my kitchen table. When I look at it, I don't remember the sound of my parents' sentence anymore. I remember the sound of a key turning once, then twice, and a drawer sliding open to the exact things a woman needs to change the ending. "How could my own family do this to me?" they asked, as if the question had only one right answer. It had as many answers as we had days together, and none of them were simple. But I learned this. If you hold your name steady and refuse to be hurried, you can turn a sentence meant to ruin you into a line that leads elsewhere. You can take a letter that tries to erase you and use it to open a door. You can set a table with plain plates and still serve victory. There's no blood in my story, no shouting in the driveway, no smashed china. Revenge looks like paperwork sometimes. Justice looks like patience. My mother's ring sits on my finger and still slides, a little loose, reminding me that not every inheritance has to fit perfectly to be worn with honor. I am 70 now. I drink tea. I actually taste. I keep notebooks, but I no longer need to write to prove I saw what I saw. I know. And when I blow out a candle, I make a wish that is not a plea. I wish simply for time, properly used. If you want to know when it all began, it was not in the lawyer's office with lilies and legal pads. It was not even on a kitchen afternoon when a girl heard the words that tried to define her. It began the day I decided to stop being hurried. It began the moment I opened the blue box with steady hands, looked at what my mother trusted me to carry, and told the truth, without heat. That's all the ending demanded. The ease of a woman who finally believes she has the right to be here, the right to read what's hers, the right to say calmly, "Let's do this properly."
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.